There's an exhibit up now in Sterling. It's entitled Pass It On, which is a phrase that's used by the American Library Association for what they call Preservation Week. That's their motto, which is basically to encourage individuals, communities, small organizations to think about the preservation of their collections. And one case is what we do to save and preserve those materials. And then the second case is what individuals can do. So things that have been kind of distilled down to simpler actions that are more sort of possible for those who don't have the resources of someplace like Yale. So the first set of cases is about photography and photographs, which are an enormous part of collections at the Beinecke and throughout the rest of the library. One whole case is devoted to the kinds of actions that we take with photographs, all different kinds of photographs. And then the second case is about strategies that people can take to take care of their own photographs, which is predominantly about knowing what the different kinds of photographic techniques are, because in each of these formats, there's a pretty wide array of format subcategories that you might find, so every photograph isn't exactly the same. Then we move on, I think, to books, which has always been our mainstay for the department. The library has always had books since 1742. And so a lot of our resources are dedicated to books, either to conserving books, reformatting brittle books, making protective housings for books. And then we move on to scrapbooks and albums, which are super difficult and really challenging for everyone because they're basically lots of objects all in one. So you've got a binding structure, you've got support paper leaves that these things are attached to, and then you have all the interesting things that people have accumulated and put in the album. So then we have some information for folks who might be hanging on to older scrapbooks or photo albums, ways they can kind of take care of them by putting them into enclosures, putting them away for safekeeping. Then we move on from albums to paper conservation, which is another really big area for us. We have lots of documents, lots of letters, lots of envelopes, lots of posters. There's a nice highlight of a particular map treatment where a folded map really became very deteriorated. They tend to fall apart along the folds if they're left for too long. And so it was washed and then completely mended and then relined on the back. It's really important to know what you have and to know what's most important to you because we can accumulate so many pieces of paper, from birth certificates to death records to everything in between that happens in our lives. So if those things are really important to you, we've got strategies in that case about the best way to organize and save them for the long term. And then we kind of move into the more modern materials like videotape, Super 8 film, home movies, and digital preservation. So we've got discs, floppy drives, flash drives, zip drives, all the myriad of things that people have used to create evidence of their lives or create intellectual content. And so those are really challenging because we can create so much of that so easily. And because all of those media types kind of change really fast on us, as well as the playback equipment that's needed to actually use and show them. So you might have a box of 8-track tapes at home, but you may not have an 8-track player anymore. And those things like VCRs are becoming more difficult to find, and you have to cobble together parts to be able to keep them working. You really have to know up front what you want to keep and what you don't. We can have, like 8 copies of the same photograph, and you can make them so quickly digitally that you may not want to save all of that, but you do want to figure out what you need. And then the last cases are about creating protective housing, boxes that can protect fragile things like objects, ceramics, dolls. And so a lot of these things are much more available to people to get custom boxes off the shelf that fit the kinds of things that they collect. It does a great service to things. It buffers them from environmental changes like temperature and relative humidity. And then it also protects things from dust and dirt. And then at the very end, we talk a little bit about risk management, which is basically about keeping places clean, keeping the temperature stable, keeping your relative humidity from fluctuating extensively, and then having some understanding of what's most valuable to you in the event of an emergency. We live in an area where we're prone to hurricanes. There can be really severe winter storms, flooding, and it's really important to know how you've stored things. And so we've got lots of tips there for people about being prepared. I'd love people to kind of marvel and appreciate the work that the staff in the Preservation and Conservation Services Department does every day. There are over 50 million, close to 50 million volumes in the collection, and then I'm not even sure how many linear feet of archival material we have. And so it can be daunting and seem like an impossible task. Secondly, I'd really like everyone to know that it's possible, that preservation is something we should all be concerned about in terms of cultural heritage, and that the things that we collect sometimes are the very things that people are creating now, that they've been storing in their basements, that are evidence of lives that maybe aren't always typically sort of put at the forefront, but can be incredibly important to researchers in terms of understanding who we are, where we came from. And I want people to feel empowered to take a hold of those collections and be the best stewards they can.